Ladies and gentlemen, we are about a week away from Wrestlepalooza, WWE's big premium live event debut, available through your VPN. Sorry, I meant to say ESPN. Of course, you would never watch this through a VPN, right? Since we're so close to Wrestlepalooza, we're gonna do what we always do for every WWE premium live event, and it's open up the floor to you to give me your bold Wrestlepalooza predictions. Whether it's match results, returns, swerves, whatever, the floor is yours. I do these videos before every single WWE premium live event, so if you want to be part of the next one, that being Crown Jewel, make sure that you're following me on X. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And you don't need a VPN to watch this YouTube channel. By the way, if you do want more than just the daily wrestling content that we upload here, consider coming over to the Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap, where you're going to get a whole host of extra videos that we never upload here, like the Raw reviews, SmackDown reviews, and more. So go check it out. Link in the description, link in the pinned comment. Let's see what you guys sent in. Braun and Bronson will beat the Usos due to some sort of disagreement that Jay and Jimmy will have, and this will lead to B&B Security being #1 contenders for the tag titles. Okay, so a couple of things to talk about here. I do want either the Usos or B&B Security to go after the tag titles. The tag titles should absolutely, at this point, be part of this storyline. They're doing nothing with the Judgment Day or the rest of the lower card tag teams, so why not? It worked wonders to put the tag titles on Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa last year. It helped elevate that faction and in turn helped elevate the tag team division. Hell, to me, that was part of the reason as to why the SmackDown tag team division was able to elevate itself as much as it ultimately did. So I'm absolutely down for the tag titles to go to B&B Security or the Usos. I don't care. In terms of the result, honestly, what you're suggesting here makes a tremendous amount of sense. To me, it seems pretty clear that they are going to be going down the path of there being tension between Jimmy and Jay. Maybe somewhere down the line, setting up an acknowledge me type of match like Jay and Roman had to have at the Hell in a Cell all of those years ago during the pandemic. So with that being said, with Jay going down a darker path, with Jay being compared now to the tribal chief Roman Reigns in terms of where his demeanor is and how he treats other people, I could see this being a very logical way to have Braun and Bronson pick up a victory here, making them look strong, while also setting a bigger storyline up for Jay, Jimmy, and whoever it is else that they interact with, like the likes of LA Knight. The long-term play here is the morality line that is being walked with Jey Uso. That's the story being told over the next several months. And I kind of agree that the best way to tell that story right now is to create some sort of animosity between Jay and Jimmy. Maybe not animosity where they're attacking each other and hate each other and they're feuding with one another right away, but it's planting major seeds, and this could be where you plant the biggest one. Brock Lesnar will beat Cena with the help of the final boss, Rock. Then he will disappear for a few months and show up the Raw before his retirement match, announcing a gauntlet match for his final one. I've weirdly been seeing this idea of a gauntlet match like being thrown around by a lot of people, including other YouTubers, where Cena goes out there and he faces all of the revolving cast of different villains that he faced throughout his career, culminating in like maybe Gunther or maybe Brock Lesnar again, or culminating in the final boss himself, The Rock. I don't necessarily love that idea because if you think about it, because it's going to be Saturday night's main event, it would likely mean that the only match on that card would be a John Cena gauntlet, because when you add and factor in commercials, there really isn't a heck of a whole lot of time to include a lot of wrestling. But listen, this idea of The Rock coming back to be part of John Cena's retirement and final match, maybe not necessarily from an in-ring perspective, but from a character perspective, I think it's plausible, mostly because we are now in the ESPN era, and I'm sure ESPN is knocking on the door of The Rock saying, please, final boss, it's going to be Bloodline Rules. Please come back for this show so that we can make a big splash in our first show on ESPN. I'm sure it's been discussed. I'm sure that it's been thrown around. Will it happen? My philosophy now when it comes to anything to do with The Rock is to say, no, I'm just not going to predict that it's going to happen anymore, because I've been burned enough times trying to predict The Rock's return when it never happens. Honestly, not sure who, but I feel like John Cena's next opponent will come out after his match with Brock. Sure, I could see that. Like, we could probably throw out a bunch of names like an AJ Styles, Dominic Mysterio. Maybe we have Gunther returning to the WWE. Like I said, maybe The Rock, maybe Chris Jericho. You could absolutely factor in a bunch of different names that could come out at the end if Cena wins to confront them for his next match. And that would be a big, splashy, crazy way to end the show on ESPN ESPN, and again, I'm sure that ESPN wants Wrestlepalooza to be this big, talked about thing that dominates the airwaves. And dominating the airwaves in the social media conversation is something that WWE certainly wants to do, specifically on that day, because don't forget that they're basically going up against AEW All Out, not head-to-head anymore, because All Out moved to earlier in the day, but I'm sure they still want to dominate the headlines. And a great way to dominate the headlines is to end the show with something bananas, something insane. Seth and Becky versus Punk and AJ should main event over Cena versus Lesnar. Cena-Lesnar is a massive match, but the tag match has 4 of the biggest superstars in modern WWE history, and one of them is returning for the first time in a decade. Like, I don't disagree with your logic. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an ESPN executive, and I'm sure that the ESPN executive that I'm imagining is drooling over the prospect of a Hollywood famous John Cena versus famous UFC star Brock Lesnar going head to head as their final main event of the show. I just don't see, again, in the context of ESPN, how the tag match is going to outrank Brock Lesnar versus Cena in terms of what closes the show. I really think that it's basically a foregone conclusion that Cena and Lesnar are going to close. The Lucha Brothers reunite. You know, initially I was like, well, how is that possible? There's nothing going on with the Lucha Brothers right now. There's no like tag match in the books at the moment, but there is currently a feud that seems to be never ending between the New Day and Penta, which does add room for 2 people to come in and help Penta. And I just don't think that it's going to be the Snore Raiders. I think it's going to be Andrade and Rey Fenix. So it's possible that here on the Go Home episode of Monday Night Raw, maybe that happens and we get the Lucha Brothers and Andrade to take on all 3 members of the New Day. Honestly, that to me is a Wrestlepalooza worthy match. This will be Lesnar's last match for a while. He might be in the Rumble, but I see this more as a one-off for John Cena's retirement. You know what? I could absolutely see you being right. Let's not forget that having Lesnar out there in terms of a liability is still a liability for the WWE from a PR perspective. It's possible that they just simply don't care or don't see him as a big enough PR liability to make him disappear. But clearly, if they see him as safe enough to bring back to the WWE in the first place, surely I imagine that they see him as brand safe enough to keep going beyond the feud with John Cena. But we're also talking about Lesnar. This is a guy that if he just wants to F off for a while, he probably will. I absolutely could see that. But if I'm WWE, TKO, if I'm going to stick my neck out to bring back Brock Lesnar and eat this giant backlash of PR like they did on social media with the return of Brock Lesnar, I'm probably assuming that they want to get the most bang for their buck for all of this PR backlash, which is probably to have Brock Lesnar in as many matches as possible. Becky and Seth win. Okay, I disagree with this. I think that it's most likely that AJ Lee and CM Punk will win this thing. However, it wouldn't be crazy or really out of the norm to have AJ Lee lose here because, well, the last time that we had somebody return from a long hiatus, it was CM Punk, and he went out there to get eliminated last in the Royal Rumble. Before that, you can think about the likes of like Brock Lesnar. When he came back after his 8-year hiatus, he went out there, first match, John Cena Extreme Rules, 2012, he loses. So maybe it wouldn't be completely out of the playbook for WWE to have the return of AJ Lee culminate in a loss to help build Becky and Seth as an ultimate evil duo where CM Punk and AJ Lee have to take multiple months to topple them. But I think in this situation, I think it makes more sense to have AJ Lee and Punk win. In fact, I would have AJ Lee pin Becky Lynch to justify a Becky Lynch and AJ Lee Intercontinental Championship feud right through to the rest of the year. LA Knight turns heel and costs the Usos, helping Bronson and Breakker to take the win. So right now, LA Knight doesn't factor into Wrestlepalooza at all, even though he is a central key figure to the storyline that's going on. He is a central key figure to the story of Jey Uso potentially turning heel and becoming like the tribal chief. So even though he's not scheduled to be in the match at Wrestlepalooza, from a storyline perspective, it wouldn't be insane to expect him to get involved in some way, shape, or form to get his back on Jey Uso after he got speared by him. Maybe it's not to turn heel, it might be to just get his lick back on Jey Uso, and that continues to be the catalyst to send Jey Uso spiraling down the road to becoming more like Roman Reigns. I've seen some people say that LA Knight is going to join the Vision. Listen, I just don't think he's a fit at all with what they're doing with the division. I hope that that isn't the case. Io Sky will win the Women's World Championship, and after the match, Asuka will attack Io. The rivalry will continue at least until Crown Jewel for a championship. I think that this is entirely possible. Listen, like the feud that's going on between Io, Rhea, the Kabuki Warriors, Nikki Bella is now part of this, doesn't necessarily need the Women's World Championship, but also putting the championship on Stephanie Vaquer has me concerned that they're going to have nothing for her at all. At the very least, giving the championship to Io, she's already got this ecosystem of a storyline with different casts of characters that are surrounding her that could lead to multiple various different types of world championship defenses with the likes of Asuka, Kairi, maybe Nikki Bella, and Rhea Ripley. Again, I would personally prefer for Stephanie Vaquer to win because the Io storyline can have fuel on its own without a world title. But again, I question putting in fuel in the jet engine that is Stephanie Vaquer by giving him the world championship if you don't really have a destination for her right now. After the main event, Chris Jericho returns. Again, I'm not entirely familiar with what Chris Jericho's AEW contract looks like. If it's over, again, maybe this is a possibility. Again, because ESPN will likely want to have a big, worthy, talked about moment to end the show, and Chris Jericho certainly would offer that. In terms of the history and legacy of Chris Jericho and John Cena, it's certainly there. Chris Jericho was John Cena's first real championship feud when he was champion, because yes, he won the championship from JBL, and then he continued on with a couple of matches with JBL, but then after that, it was the feud with Chris Jericho. Cena gets drafted to Raw, and the first person that he feuds with is Chris Jericho. His first appearance on Raw was on the highlight reel, Chris Jericho's talk show. So there is a lot of history there as Chris Jericho being the one to usher in the era of Cena on Monday Night Raw, where he would stay for basically the rest of his peak of his career. So there is absolutely room to run Cena and Jericho from like a legacy perspective and the influence in John Cena's career. Will we have enough runway to make that happen? It all depends on when Chris Jericho's contract with AEW ends. Randy versus Cody versus Drew will be announced this Friday for Wrestlepalooza. I sure hope so. There is more than enough room for the World Championship match to take place at Wrestlepalooza. We haven't seen Cody Rhodes for a while now at this point. I think it's time for him to return, and it's time to get our champion back, and it's time to feature Randy Orton in a main event program. I love Jelly Roll. I learned and grew to really like his work, but it's time to bring Randy and Drew McIntyre, for that matter, to where they belong, which is surrounding and being sharks around the WWE Undisputed Champion Cody Rhodes. I hope that this is exactly what happens. I feel like for WrestlePalooza, you gotta have your top championship being defended. You gotta have your top face of the company, Cody Rhodes, and you gotta have like as much star power as you can just jam pack into the show, and Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre certainly offer that. Stephanie Vaquer versus Io Sky will be a match of the year contender. I think given the right amount of time, it will surpass that of both the Evolution main event and the WrestleMania triple threat in its quality. Just based on in-ring skill alone, we might be looking at the two most talented women's professional wrestlers in the industry right now, certainly at least in all of WWE. Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer have all of the physical tools to put on the best match of the entire year, men's or women's. Like you said, it's whether they're willing to give them the ability to put on a match of the year contender. We've already seen them absolutely melt our eyeballs in their basically two exhibition matches that they had that ended in a no contest. And I've been saying for a while that the next time that I wanted to see Io Sky versus Stephanie Vaquer was a match on a PLE that will have a proper finish and for a title. Bing, boom, bow. We got all three of them. The ecosystem, the environment is set up perfectly for this to be the best match of all of 2025. I just hope that it actually happens. My bold prediction is that this PLE will have one of the lowest ratings on record. The move to ESPN, putting it behind another paywall, might not end well. At least for me, I'm skipping it and will watch the highlights on YouTube later. I'm sure that there is a large amount of people that fall under this scenario here, where it's just asking too much money. The jump from $8 to $30 a month per PLE on ESPN is just too big and too steep of an ask. Now, I know that there's a bunch of you that already have the ESPN cable package and it's not going to cost you anymore, but you got to remember that there are a lot of people that have already cut their cords. Like, people with cable nowadays, in my opinion, are probably the minority at this point. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of people that that are going to have to figure out how to get access to ESPN. And once they realize it's $30, it's possible that they might bow out or find alternative ways to watch the show. So we'll see. I'm really curious from like a numbers perspective how Wrestlepalooza is going to perform. I doubt they'll release numbers, but I'm certainly curious. Gunther is coming out to confront Cena. Yes, not enough people are throwing this name around because there was a lot of conversation earlier in the summer about Gunther potentially being John Cena's final opponent, and now we're looking at Gunther being gone for a month and a half now. I could absolutely see Wrestlepalooza being the place where Gunther returns and makes it known that he wants to be John Cena's final match, or maybe it's his matchup in Perth, Australia. When you look at the remaining dates that John Cena has, he has no dates between Wrestlepalooza and Perth in terms of appearances on Raw or SmackDown. They're literally going, in terms of John Cena matches, right from Wrestlepalooza right to Perth, Australia with Crown Jewel. So I really think that Wrestlepalooza has to end in a manner that tells us what John Cena's match at Crown Jewel is going to be, and Gunther, I think, is a great choice. Bianca Belair returns to challenge the winner out of Io and Steph. I also think that this is very plausible. Once again, we have to go back to this idea of WWE wanting to make this first impression on ESPN be a memorable one. And when it comes to women's professional wrestling, there aren't very many names that are bigger than Bianca Belair out there. So Bianca Belair going out there, calling her shot against Io Sky is one, exciting because we've already seen them work together and it was magical. Or if she comes out to confront Steph, boom, magical as well, because that's a new matchup that we've never seen before. So I'm actually all for this. John Cena beats Brock Lesnar clean. No interferences, no bloodline rules, just wins clean. I certainly hope so. I hope that John Cena wins. I think that to me is the most important thing here. Brock Lesnar has basically been John Cena's boogeyman throughout his entire career, whooping his ass in the Ruthless Aggression era, whooping his ass in the 2010s. Yes, Cena won at Extreme Rules, but still got his ass absolutely whooped during that match. I think it's time that Cena gets a proper victory over Brock Lesnar. I really think that it'll be a great cathartic follow-up after his loss at SummerSlam. Stephanie Vaquer will not compete at Wrestlepalooza. The match will be pulled out last minute. I don't like it, but I think it might happen. Hopefully, they can use it as a way to tell a compelling story rather than it just being idiotic. You know, I would say that you're being crazy, but like you're not. There's not particularly a huge amount of confidence right now in terms of WWE's booking and treatment of Stephanie Vaquer. They've decided to focus on her being in an NXT program going into NXT Homecoming rather than having her be part of a buildup with Io Sky. Io Sky has been more focused on the storyline with the Kabuki Warriors than in a storyline against the person that she's literally facing for the World Championship, and that has me concerned. Plus the fact that they canceled the contract signing also has me concerned. So I don't think that you are crazy for thinking this way. I think this is still highly unlikely, but the fact that it is even in the back of our heads is really scary. Not sure they will be in a match or a segment, but she will return and have one of the biggest pops in WWE women's history. I don't think so. I think a safe bet would be to have Liv Morgan return at the Royal Rumble and win the Royal Rumble. After so many years of being the bridesmaid at the Rumble, I think a perfect time for her to return, both in terms of timeline for her injury that was reported and in terms of biggest impact. I think the Royal Rumble is the place. So I don't think that this happens at Wrestlepalooza. I don't want or think that this will happen, but I just want to hear your thoughts. Brock Lesnar will win like at SummerSlam many years ago. I certainly hope not. I could see maybe them doing a callback, an homage to that match where Brock Lesnar starts the match by just absolutely pummeling John Cena, with John Cena getting absolutely no offense. Considering John Cena's retirement tour, especially over the last couple of months, has been doing a lot of callbacks, a lot of wink winks, nudge nudges to the fans that have been part of John Cena's career. So them doing an homage to Brock Lesnar eating John Cena alive at SummerSlam, I think is a good idea, frankly, but I want to see it end differently. I want to see the storybook ending of Cena being able to conquer Brock Lesnar this time around. The real fourth member will be revealed in one of the tag matches. I'm done predicting or waiting for fourth members. I think Becky Lynch, the Bronsons, and Seth Rollins is enough. I don't think this happens. All Out ends up being the better show. The better show. Look, when it comes to quality, AEW PLEs generally knock it out of the park. I don't think that WWE is going to try and be a better show than All Out, like from a wrestling perspective. I think that's gotta be borderline impossible. Like AEW just absolutely always knocks it out of the park. I think it will be about, can they capture the conversation? Can they capture social media above All Out? That's what I think WWE is focused on, because I agree with you. I think from an in-ring perspective, match quality, I wouldn't be surprised if All Out is better. 50 ads for sure. Okay, I'm genuinely really fascinated to see what the structure of advertisement is going to look like on this show. Are they going to have way more ads in the ring? Are they going to have more sponsored items like another fireball ladder or a fireball segment in the back? And more just commercial breaks in between matches. I'm sure ESPN is going to want to try and make as much money back as they can. So I do anticipate for us to get an uptick in ads in some capacity during this show. The number of international viewers will mysteriously spike while the domestic viewers will fall. Yes, the power of a VPN. I really think that VPN numbers are going to skyrocket because of this. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that if you're an American fan and you jump on a VPN, that you can get everything on Netflix as opposed to like being piecemealed and getting nickeled and dimed in 5 different places. So yeah, I think that this is probably a foregone conclusion. All right, folks, thank you so much for submitting in your bold predictions for Wrestlepalooza. Don't forget that we will be watching Wrestlepalooza here as a community, so come check it out. I'll be live here on YouTube, but you guys take care, be wonderful people, and get out of here.